You know what your salary and ice cream in the sun have in common? They both melt right before your eyes. Only ice cream melts from the heat, while your money melts from actions taken by the government. And the most interesting part is that most people don't even notice how this happens. Imagine this situation. 10 years ago, you could buy a full cart of groceries at the supermarket for a certain amount. Today, for the same money, you can barely fill half of it. Your salary seems to have grown, but somehow the money buys fewer things. This isn't your imagination. This is the result of a financial system that works according to certain rules. And these rules are not written in your favor. Today, we'll break down 3 main financial tricks that governments use around the world. These mechanisms work regardless of which country you live in. They operate quietly, imperceptibly, but very effectively. After this video, you'll start seeing the financial system with completely different eyes. You'll understand why becoming rich is so difficult and what you can do to protect your money. Let's start with the first and most invisible trick: the inflation tax. Have you ever heard of a tax that no one approves in Parliament, that isn't listed in any tax code, but that absolutely everyone pays? It's inflation. And it's the most sophisticated way to take your money so that you don't even notice. Let's figure out how this works with a simple example. Imagine that there are only $1,000 in the economy, and you can buy 1,000 loaves of bread with them. That means one loaf costs $1. Now, the government prints another $1,000. The total amount of money doubles, but the amount of bread remains the same, 1,000 loaves. What happens? The price of bread rises to $2 per loaf. If you had $100, you could buy 100 loaves of bread. After printing new money, you still have $100, but now you can only buy 50 loaves. Half of your purchasing power has evaporated. You didn't spend this money. No one took it from you. It just depreciated. This is the inflation tax. Governments love this tool for several reasons. First, it doesn't need approval. It doesn't need to go through Parliament. You don't need to explain to voters why you're raising taxes. The central bank simply prints money, and that's it. Second, people don't understand what's happening. When taxes rise, everyone gets upset. When prices rise, people blame stores, manufacturers, anyone, just not those who print the money. Let's look at real numbers. Over the past 20 years, the purchasing power of major world currencies has decreased by an average of 40 to 50%. This means that if you simply kept money under your mattress or in a bank account, you lost half of its value. You didn't spend it. You lost it. Your money simply stopped being worth as much as before. This is especially noticeable during crises. When governments need money to stimulate the economy, to pay benefits, to support businesses, they don't raise taxes. They print money. During the pandemic, central banks injected trillions of dollars, euros, and other currencies into the economy. Where did this money come from? They simply printed it. And what happened next? Prices for everything went up. Now, here's the most interesting part. Rich people practically don't suffer from inflation. Why? Because they don't keep money in cash but in assets, in real estate, in stocks, in business. When they print money, prices for these assets also rise. If you have an apartment, its value increases along with inflation. If you have company shares, they become more expensive. The rich get even richer. And what happens to ordinary people? Their main wealth is their salary and savings in the bank. Salaries grow slower than inflation. Savings depreciate. It turns out that inflation is a tax that hits those with the least money first and foremost. This is a redistribution of wealth from the poor to the rich, hidden under the guise of economic policy. Governments say that inflation of 2 to 3% is normal, even beneficial for the economy. But let's calculate. 3% per year means that over 10 years, your money will lose almost a third of its value. Over 20 years, more than half. Over 30 years, money will depreciate by 60%. Is this normal? Normal for whom? The most insidious thing about the inflation tax is that it's impossible to avoid by simply working more or saving money. The more you save, the more you lose. This is a tax on thrift. This is punishment for not spending money immediately, but trying to save for the future. Now that you understand how inflation works, let's move on to the second trick. It's connected to how the tax system is structured. And here lies an even more interesting story. The tax system in most countries is built so that the more you earn in salary, the higher percentage the state takes. This is called a progressive tax scale. Sounds fair, right? The rich pay more. But the devil, as always, is in the details. Here's where it gets really interesting. Taxes on salary are one thing. Taxes on capital are completely different, and the difference between them is enormous. If you work and receive a salary, you pay income tax and social contributions. In total, this can reach 30, 40, and in some countries up to 50% of your income. Half of what you earned goes to the state. Now let's look at rich people. How do they earn money? Not from salary. They receive dividends from stocks, income from renting out real estate, profit from selling assets. And you know what? Taxes on these types of income are significantly lower. In most developed countries, the tax on dividends and long-term capital gains is between 10 and 20%. Almost half as much as the tax on salary. Let's take a concrete example. There are two people. Both earn $100,000 a year. The first works as a doctor, receives a salary. They take, let's say, 40% in taxes from him. He gets $60,000 in hand. The second person owns stocks and real estate, receives dividends and rental income. They take 15% from him. He gets $85,000 in hand. Both earned the same amount, but one was left with $60,000, the other with $85,000. But that's not all. Rich people use legal ways to minimize taxes that are unavailable to ordinary workers. They create companies through which they conduct their expenses. Bought a car, it's a company expense. Went to a conference in another country, business trip. Rented an office that has a restroom, business expense. All of this is deducted from the taxable base. A working person buys a car with money after paying taxes. He's already given 40% to the state, and then with the remaining money buys a car, pays for gas, for insurance, everything from his own pocket. A rich person buys a car through a company, and this reduces his taxes. The difference is colossal. There are even more advanced schemes. Rich people don't sell their assets to get money. They take loans secured by these assets. Why? Because selling assets is subject to capital gains tax, but a loan is not income. It's not taxed. Moreover, loan interest can be written off as an expense if it's a business loan. It turns out that rich people live on borrowed money. Their assets grow in value, and they pay almost no taxes. The funniest thing is that all of this is legal. This isn't tax evasion. This is using rules that are embedded in the tax code. And here's the question. Who writes tax laws? Politicians. Who finances politicians? Rich people and corporations. See the connection? It turns out to be a vicious circle. Rich people help elect politicians who write tax laws in favor of rich people. These laws allow the rich to pay less taxes. They have more money left. They become even richer and can influence politics even more. And what about working people? They can't hire an army of accountants and lawyers. They can't create complex corporate structures. They can't transfer profits to countries with low taxes. They simply receive a salary from which the maximum tax is automatically deducted. And that's it. No loopholes, no deductions, no optimizations. The situation gets even worse when we talk about indirect taxes. Value-added tax, excise taxes, sales tax, everyone pays all of this equally. When you buy bread, you pay VAT. When a billionaire buys bread, he pays the same VAT. But for you, these 20 cents are a significant part of your budget. For a billionaire, it's nothing. Indirect taxes disproportionately hurt the poor. Let's look at the big picture. A working person pays income tax up to 50%, then VAT on all purchases another 20%, then property tax, vehicle tax, excise taxes on gasoline. In total, the real tax burden can reach 60 to 70% of income. A rich person reduces his effective tax rate to 10 to 15% through various mechanisms, sometimes even less. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This isn't fiction. There are studies showing that in some countries, billionaires pay a lower percentage of their income in taxes than their own secretaries. This is absurd, but it's reality. The system is built to encourage capital accumulation and punish labor. If you work, pay the maximum. If you own assets, pay the minimum. And this isn't an accident. This is a conscious choice enshrined in laws, because laws are written by those who have capital. If you're finding this information valuable, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're going to dive even deeper into how money really works, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now let's move on to the third, perhaps the most insidious trick. It's called financial repression, and most people don't even suspect its existence. Financial repression is when the state artificially lowers interest rates to borrow money cheaply while citizens lose on their savings. Sounds complicated? Let me explain with a simple example. Imagine that inflation is 5% per year. This means that prices are rising by 5%. For your savings not to depreciate, the bank should give you at least 5% per annum on a deposit. Then, you don't lose purchasing power. But what if the bank gives you only 2%? It turns out that you're really losing 3% per year. This is financial repression. Well, why do banks give such low interest rates? Because the central bank sets the key rate at a low level. And why does the central bank need a low rate? So the government can borrow money cheaply. When rates are low, the state issues bonds with a minimum interest rate, and this is very cheap for them. Who pays for this? Depositors? All those people who keep money in banks. Let's calculate real losses. If you have $1 million in a deposit at 2% per year and inflation is 5%, you lose $30,000 of purchasing power per year. Over 10 years, that's $300,000. Over 20 years, $600,000. More than half of your money simply evaporates. But the most interesting part begins when we look at where this money goes. The government borrows cheaply, issues bonds with low yields. Who buys these bonds? Banks. Banks take your money that you deposited at 2% and buy government bonds at 3%. 1% difference is the bank's profit. The government gets cheap money, banks get profit, and you lose money due to inflation. This is a hidden form of taxation. Instead of raising taxes and honestly saying we need money, the government simply creates conditions under which your savings depreciate. The result is the same: you have less money, the state has more. But it's done invisibly. After the 2008 financial crisis, central banks around the world lowered rates to almost zero. In some countries, rates even became negative. Can you imagine? You put money in a bank and a year later you get less than you deposited. Officially, in nominal terms. This is complete absurdity. Why did they do this? The official version is to stimulate the economy, so companies would take cheap loans and invest. But look at the real consequences. Cheap money didn't go to small businesses or ordinary people. It went to large corporations and banks. They took these cheap loans and bought assets, stocks, real estate, gold. Prices for all of this skyrocketed. An interesting picture emerges. Ordinary people's savings depreciate due to low rates and high inflation. At the same time, asset prices are rising because the rich are buying everything with cheap loans. The gap between rich and poor is widening. And all of this is the result of conscious central bank policy. There's another aspect of financial repression: the forced placement of pension savings in government bonds. In many countries, pension funds are required to hold a significant portion of funds in government securities. This gives the government a guaranteed source of cheap financing. And what do future retirees get? Returns below inflation. Their pension savings are melting before their eyes. In the past, in the 70s and 80s of the last century, depositors received interest that covered inflation. You could put money in a bank and actually accumulate savings. Now, it's impossible. Putting money on deposit means guaranteed loss of purchasing power. But most people continue to do this because they don't know alternatives or are afraid to take risks. And governments are happy. They get cheap financing for their expenses. They can spend more without raising taxes. They can hand out promises to voters and finance these promises at the expense of depreciating savings. This is politically convenient. There are far fewer dissatisfied people than if they raise taxes. Another interesting point, low interest rates encourage people to take loans. Mortgages become more affordable, consumer loans cheaper. People get into debt. And what happens to debtors during inflation? Their debts depreciate. Took a loan for 10 years, after 10 years with inflation at 5% per year, the real value of the debt will decrease by almost half. It would seem this is good for borrowers. But there's a nuance. Who is the biggest debtor in the country? The government. Government debt is huge almost everywhere, and when inflation occurs, this debt depreciates. The government borrows today and repays with depreciated money tomorrow. Who loses? Creditors. And who are the creditors? Those who buy government bonds, pension funds, insurance companies, banks, that is, ultimately, ordinary people. The whole system is built on a constant transfer of money from those who work and save to those who own assets and have access to cheap loans. This isn't a bug in the system. This is a feature. This is how the system is designed to work. Many economists say that a little inflation and low rates are necessary to stimulate the economy. Perhaps there's some truth to this. But let's be honest. The main reason governments love inflation and low rates is the ability to finance their spending without raising taxes and without cutting programs. This is politically profitable, even if economically harmful to most citizens. And now, having analyzed all three tricks, the inflation tax, unequal taxation of labor and capital, and financial repression. Let's look at the big picture and think about what can be done about it. All these mechanisms work together and reinforce each other. Inflation depreciates your money. The tax system takes most of what you earn through labor. Low interest rates don't let you protect savings. At the same time, rich people pay fewer taxes, have access to cheap loans, and invest money in assets that grow in price thanks to inflation. The gap increases not because the rich work 10 times more or are 10 times smarter. The gap increases because the financial system is structured so that money flows upward. From those who have little to those who have a lot. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is the logical consequence of the rules by which the system operates. So what should an ordinary person do? First, you need to understand these mechanisms. You can't protect yourself from what you don't know about. Most people don't understand why they're getting poorer even though they're working more. They blame themselves, the economy, the government in general. But they don't see the specific mechanisms. Now you see them. Second, you need to change your money management strategy. Keeping money on deposit is a guaranteed way to become poorer. Inflation will eat your savings. You need to convert money into assets. This can be real estate, stocks, gold, Bitcoin, business, anything that preserves or increases value during inflation. Yes, it's a risk. Stocks can fall, real estate can become cheaper, but keeping money on deposit isn't the absence of risk. It's guaranteed loss. The question isn't whether to risk or not. The question is which risk to choose. The risk of possible loss or guaranteed depreciation. Third, you need to learn to use the same tools that the rich use. You don't necessarily need to create complex corporate structures. But you can open an individual business and legally reduce taxes. You can buy assets that bring passive income. You can invest in your education and skills that increase your value in the labor market. The system won't change by itself. Those who benefit from the current arrangement aren't interested in changes. But you can change your position in the system. You can stop being the one who constantly loses and become the one who benefits from existing rules. Education is the key. Financial literacy isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Understanding how money works, how taxation works, how inflation works, this will give you a huge advantage. Most people go through school and university without gaining this knowledge. Then they work their whole lives for the system, not understanding why they can't break free. Another important point is diversification. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't keep all your money in one currency, in one bank, in one type of asset. Spread the risks, part in real estate, part in stocks, part in gold, part in cryptocurrency if you're ready for volatility. When one falls, another may rise. It's also important to understand that governments aren't omnipotent. They can print money, but they can't create real value. Real value is created by people through their labor, their ideas, their enterprises, and this value doesn't disappear. It's simply redistributed. If you create real value through your work, through business, through investments in productive assets, you're protected better than those who simply hoard paper money. Because paper money is just promises. And real assets, real skills, real value, that's what will remain under any conditions. Don't wait for the system to become fair. Don't wait for the government to start caring about your interests more than their own. History shows this doesn't happen. Every government, every elite will always act in their own interests. This isn't good or bad. It's just reality. Your task is to understand this reality and adapt to it. Use the rules of the game in your favor. Learn from those who have already won this game. No need to reinvent the wheel. Strategies for protecting and multiplying capital are known and time-tested. You just need to start applying them. And finally, don't let the system break you psychologically. Many people fall into despair when they understand how everything is arranged. They feel deceived, helpless. But this is the wrong reaction. The right reaction is to accept reality and start acting based on it. You can't change the system alone, but you can change your position in the system. You can stop being a victim and become a player. You have knowledge. Now you have understanding. It's up to action. Start today. Don't put it off until tomorrow, until next month, until the moment when you accumulate more money. Start with what you have. Open a brokerage account and buy your first stock. Study tax optimization opportunities for your situation. Transfer part of your savings to gold or another protective asset. Invest in your education. Any action is better than inaction. Before we continue, if you're getting value from this video, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Let's build a community of people who understand how money really works. The system will continue to work according to the same rules. Inflation won't disappear. The tax system won't become fair. Financial repression will continue. But now you know about it. And this knowledge gives you power. The power to make the right decisions. The power to protect your money. The power to build wealth despite all obstacles. Remember that wealth isn't just money. It's your skills, your knowledge, your connections, your health. Invest in all of this. Develop yourself as an asset. A person with in-demand skills and knowledge will always find a way to earn, regardless of what's happening with the economy. Create sources of passive income. This is money that comes to you even when you're not working. Dividends from stocks, rental income from real estate, royalties from intellectual property. Income from a business that works without your constant participation. The more such sources you have, the less you depend on one salary that inflation depreciates every day. Surround yourself with people who understand these principles. Your environment shapes your thinking. If everyone around you complains about life and does nothing, you'll do the same. If you're surrounded by people who invest, develop, look for opportunities, you'll grow with them. Teach this to your children. Financial literacy is one of the most valuable gifts you can give them. School doesn't teach this. University doesn't teach it. If you don't teach them, they'll repeat the same mistakes that most people make. They'll work their whole lives not understanding why money slips through their fingers. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Any successful investor, any wealthy person made mistakes. The difference is that they learned from them and kept moving forward. The worst mistake is to do nothing at all out of fear of making a mistake. Then the only guaranteed result is slow impoverishment due to inflation and taxes. Be patient. Wealth isn't built in a month or a year. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Speed isn't important, but direction and consistency are. Small, correct actions repeated regularly over many years give incredible results, thanks to the power of compound interest. Compound interest works not only with money, but also with knowledge, skills, and habits. If you become a little better, a little more literate, a little richer every day, in a few years you won't recognize yourself. Most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And remember the main thing. The system doesn't make you poor. The system creates conditions that make getting rich difficult, but not impossible. Millions of people around the world have understood these rules and used them to their advantage. They're not smarter than you. They're not more hardworking. They just know how the game works and play by the rules that lead to victory. These rules are simple. Don't keep money in cash or on deposits longer than necessary. Invest in assets that grow faster than inflation. Minimize taxes in legal ways. Create passive sources of income. Constantly develop your skills and knowledge. Surround yourself with the right people. Be patient and consistent. Today you learned about 3 main financial tricks that governments use around the world. The inflation tax that invisibly takes away the purchasing power of your money. Unequal taxation that hits labor and spares capital. Financial repression that doesn't allow you to protect savings through deposits. Now you have a map. You see the terrain. You understand where the traps are, where the opportunities are. It's up to you. You can continue to live as before, complaining about the injustice of the system. Or you can start acting. Start building your wealth using the same tools that those who are already rich use. The choice is always yours. The system won't change, but you can change. You can become someone who understands the rules of the game and wins instead of someone who doesn't understand and loses. Start today. Take the first step. Open an investment account. Buy your first book on financial literacy. Study the tax deductions available to you. Any action brings you closer to your goal. In a year, you'll only regret one thing that you didn't start earlier. But it's better to start now than to regret in a year that you didn't start today. Time is the only resource that can't be bought, can't be returned, can't be accumulated. Use it wisely. Every day without action is a day of lost opportunities. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait until you accumulate a large sum. Don't wait until you study everything thoroughly. Start with what you have. Learn in the process. Adjust your course as you go. The main thing is to move. Standing still in a world where inflation works means moving backward. Share this video with those who are dear to you. Help them see what you now see. Financial literacy isn't a zero-sum game. When more people understand how the system works, it doesn't make you poorer. It creates a fairer society where success depends on knowledge and action, not on the accident of birth. Subscribe to the channel if you want more content about how money works, how to protect your capital, how to build wealth in the conditions of the modern financial system. We'll break down specific strategies, specific tools, specific examples. Because knowledge without action is useless, but action without knowledge is dangerous. Write in the comments what topics interest you, what questions you have after this video, what your experience is with investing and protecting capital. Let's create a community of people who understand the rules of the game and help each other win. Remember that the system's greatest victory is making you believe that you can't change anything, that you're doomed to work your whole life and remain poor. This is a lie. You can change your life. You can build wealth. You can provide yourself and your family with financial freedom. But only if you start acting. Don't let fear paralyze you. Don't let uncertainty stop you. Everyone who is rich now was once where you are now. They didn't know everything. They were afraid. They doubted. But they started. They took the first step, then the second, then the 10th, then the 100th. And after a few years, they ended up in a completely different place. This can be your story too. The story of a person who understood how the system works and used this knowledge to build wealth. The story of a person who didn't give up, didn't give in, didn't believe that nothing could be changed. The story of a person who took responsibility for their financial life into their own hands. Start writing this story today. The first chapter begins with a decision, the decision to no longer be a victim of the system, the decision to become a player, the decision to learn, act, and grow. Everything else will follow. Thank you for watching to the end. This means you really want change. This means you're ready to learn. This means you have a chance. Use it. Act. And in a year, come back to this video to see how far you've come. And hey, if this video opened your eyes to how the financial system really works, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next videos. We're going to keep exposing the truth about money, and trust me, you want to be part of this community. Share this with your friends and family who need to hear this message. Together, we can beat the system at its own game. Good luck on this journey. See you in the next video.